It was only after I graduated from George Washington that I realized just how much I missed out on. Because college really was such a profound, transformational, and adventurous experience for me, and I found myself in the later years wishing that I could go back and do it all over again. Because I didn't really know what I was doing back then, and I didn't really fully appreciate it for what it was. So I want to offer you some of the advice that I picked up from my experience both in college and in the years after that, so that if you're headed off to college, then hopefully that helps you be a little bit more prepared. But also, if you've already graduated, you can still get something out of it, because some of these things do apply to real life. So I am going to put chapters down below, but loosely I am going to organize this by starting off talking about the transition from high school to college, followed by discussion on academics, career prep, and the social life aspect of things. So here's some advice to hopefully help you make the most out of your college experience. So as far as the transition goes, I actually did an entirely separate video entitled Preparing for Freshman Year of College, where I go into detail about a lot of many notable things that you should be aware of, including class registration, so knowing what classes you want to register for beforehand so that you can actually get seats in them, because it is highly competitive. I also talk about move-in day, making sure you have everything you need for that, getting a map and making sure you know your way around campus and actually getting out and exploring before your classes even start. But with that set aside, one of the more notable things that I do want to talk about is how difficult the transition is going to be overall, just kind of emotionally, in terms of the fact that you're going to leave high school, this very familiar territory for you, and go off into unfamiliar territory. And you're going to be completely on your own. It is very difficult. It's also kind of sad, and in many respects, at least it was for me, because when I was in high school, I sort of had that nest, so to speak, where I had a home to go to at the end of every day. And even in school, everybody kind of knew who I was. I was a familiar face, and everything you did kind of had some meaning attached to it, for better or worse. So I was a somebody, and it was a comfortable environment. I'd gotten used to it, and there was a pretty liberal safety net there for me. But now I was transitioning and going off into unfamiliar territory, like I said, where I had no idea how to manage anything on my own. I didn't have any friends that I knew. I didn't have a home to go to at the end of every day. But as difficult and as frustrating and sad as that was in the beginning, over time I learned to appreciate that, because it is actually vitally important. And the reason it's so important to kind of create that separation and learn how to survive on your own is because college is kind of the first step into adulthood, where you're going to be on your own and you can't rely on friends and family to save the day. And so you might as well take advantage of sort of this intermediary step where there's still a little bit of a safety net left, not quite as much as before, but nevertheless more than what you're going to have when you graduate college and get your own job, so that by the time you do actually get there, you're ready for it. So don't make the same mistake that a lot of people make, which is looking for colleges that are close to home so that they can drive home every weekend and be with their friends and family. Or maybe even you get to college and decide that it's too far away, so you transfer out somewhere closer to home. Instead, force yourself to create that separation. Seek out colleges that are far away from home so you don't really have a choice, which is what I did, because I'm from Seattle and GW is all the way across the country. And again, as much as I didn't like that, eventually it did actually outfit me for success. Now, your academics and career prep are obviously related, but I'll take them one at a time. So as far as your academics go, one of the biggest mistakes that I made was assuming that the most important thing is taking really difficult classes and challenging yourself and learning as much as possible. And that is true to an extent, but it's not the most important thing, because actually what people place their premium on, and when I say people, I mean employers and graduate schools, is your GPA followed by your major in that order. And that's just the way it is. That's what I found in my experience to be the most important things. At least when you first start out, it's relevant to employers and it becomes less and less relevant over time. But for graduate schools, which is something you might very well find you want to do later on, that stays relevant pretty much forever. So what are some ways that you can get a good GPA? I mean, for one, don't sabotage yourself by seeking out harder classes. At least when you have a choice and you have a little bit of flexibility, such as with general electives, take classes that are easier. And you can find out what's easier for you by looking at sites like Rate My Professor or talking to people that have taken those classes beforehand. So again, work smarter and not harder. Another thing you can do to give yourself a leg up in a class and to get a better grade is to look for and take advantage of whatever shortcuts might exist. By all means, take advantage of those things and don't think that you're some kind of a martyr for not doing that. And I'm not encouraging you to cheat. Instead, I'm saying that there are ethical ways that you can do that. So, for example, if the professor says that the quizzes are going to be based off of both the homework assignments and the readings, but then you find consistently after one or two quizzes that it's only based predominantly on the homework assignments, then don't listen to that. Don't make your life harder on purpose and do the readings. Instead, study the homework assignments and use the time that you freed up to study something else. And finally, when it comes to your major, you do want to pick something that you have some level of interest in, so that you actually have motivation to do the work. But at the same time, it's important to note that there are some majors out there that are going to make you far more marketable to employers than others. And mostly those are going to be your hard sciences, things like computer science, mechanical engineering, bioinformatics, you name it. And I know that in my case, even though I had a pretty dismal GPA coming out of college, the fact that I had a BS in computer science is really what saved me at the end of the day. Career-wise, I have just a few pieces of advice. For one, take advantage of your on-campus career center instead of just avoiding it like most people do, because they have resources that you're not going to find and be able to take advantage of just by randomly applying for jobs online. Most notably, a job forum, a job posting board that most universities will have, where employers can post jobs that have openings specifically for students from your school. So you're eliminating a lot of the competition that way. Also, stay active during your summers. So I was in the ROTC program, so I was off doing some kind of military training most of my summers, which is also an option for you. But if you don't want to do that, then you need to have some kind of internship, unpaid work, volunteer experience, what have you, on your resume, so that when the time comes to apply for a job, you have something else on there other than just going to school. A couple things to note about summer internships, what have you. The deadlines are usually much sooner than you might think. So they might even start hiring as soon as January for something that starts in June. So you don't want to miss out on that. So make sure you do your research and prepare for that early. Also, it usually makes sense to work for the same company multiple times rather than jumping around, because you kind of have a way in after that when it comes time for you to actually look to get hired. And last thing to note here is start building your professional network as soon as possible. Now, I did an entirely separate video entitled How to Get Professional References, where I go into detail on how exactly to do that, so I'm not going to do that again here. But just at a glance, you want to make sure that you establish and maintain good relationships with both your professors and your teaching assistants, so that when the time comes for you to actually need references for graduate school and jobs, you have them ready. And last but certainly not least, your social life, which is just as important as your academics. And I figured there's no more of a fitting place than Fraternity Row, which is actually right over my right shoulder, to film this segment of the video. But nevertheless, like I've said many times before, college is a very special time, because you're never again going to have an opportunity like this where you're kind of exploring adulthood for the first time and figuring out what you want to do for the rest of your life and kind of going on this adventure. And it's such a great opportunity to make friends, because not only are you in sort of an enclosed community where you have all these natural opportunities to meet people, which are fewer and farther between as you grow older, but also you guys are going through that same experience alongside each other, so that later on down the road, when you guys are good friends with each other, you can look back and say, hey, we actually went through college together, right? And that's not something that you can say about most other people that you're going to meet. So it's a very special thing to be able to bond over. So don't be like me, where I just had a very negative, pessimistic attitude and outlook on everything, because no one's going to want to be your friend as a result. So instead, be open-minded and receptive and kind towards people whenever you meet them, so that they'll actually want to be around you. And take advantage of every opportunity that you have to make friends. That includes joining clubs and organizations that you're interested in, but also fostering a good relationship with your roommates, which I've talked about before, because how many other people can you look back on and say that you guys actually lived with each other in college, right? That's a very special thing to be able to bond over. So don't worry about the fact that you're not going to have a whole lot of privacy or personal space, which is what I was overtly concerned with. Instead, go out with your roommates and be kind to them and tolerant towards them, so that you guys can actually lay the groundwork for a friendship that's possibly going to last for a lifetime. And lastly, in your classes, that's also another great way to make friends. So instead of being antisocial and walking to and from class alone and going straight from class back to your dorm all the time, instead walk with other people. Ask them how the class is going for them, possibly even form study groups in which you probably aren't going to get a whole lot of work done, but still, it's another great way to make friends. And of course, you can't talk about a social life at college without talking about parties, right? So at least here at GW, we have frat parties, dorm parties, nightclubs, and bars if you're old enough. And so there's a pretty large variety. And even if that's not your thing, which it certainly wasn't mine, I'm not a party animal, I'm not really into that. But I'm glad that at least some of the time I push myself to go out there and try those new things, because at a minimum, they're fun memories to reflect on, and you have interesting stories to tell about your time at college. Instead of just spending that time, I mean, what else are you going to do that's so much better with your time? I mean, of course you can study, but you can also manage your time a little bit more effectively so that you can afford to go out and have fun at least once or twice a month. But at the same time, don't feel like you have to be belligerent or irresponsible in order to have fun, because you don't. You can have fun and have a great time and make friends when you're sober, and I recommend that you do that. But it's also important to take care of your health. So make sure you're going to the gym and exercising regularly, watching your diet, having a regular sleep schedule, and not taking things to the extreme. So on a concluding note, college truly is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And like I said, you're never going to get these years back. So Of course, set yourself up for success and be responsible, but also don't forget to have fun and to establish relationships, because the memories that you have here are going to be just as important as the degree that you get. So I hope you guys liked the video. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.